Hi, Julie. How's it going? How are you doing? Doing good?
Hi. Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Oh no, this is a pleasure and honor. Of course, it's when did you graduate from the American Business School?
So I had my 6 months internship, and then I graduated, and that was in March 2017.
Oh wow,
So it's
2017.
been 4 years, yeah.
Almost 4 years. Wow. The time passes fast, man. Like day in, day out. I've been teaching the MBA for quite some time, but your, what do you call it, batch or your semester was quite interesting. The people in your batch, I remember. And it was funny that, continuing with the same course of global and e-marketing, what I have with you guys now, I have more courses in the MBA. I also have
Yeah.
brand management. They have opened a new course of, sorry, this new section of MSc. So I'll be teaching international strategic management or marketing management, something like that. So school has grown, more students are showing up. And after graduation, what did you basically do after that?
So I did a very nice internship that I sort of had no experience in the field. I happened to be in design. So I interned for this design firm and I did project management, which I'm not even very good at in
Okay.
project management, but I loved sort of the creative part. I would always, like we would work, for brands in beauty. They're the company that does all the designs for our friends and things like that, but I wasn't on that team. I was on the beauty and luxury team, which
Mhm,
fit me very well. But
mhm.
I just love to be with the creatives, how they choose the colors, how they choose the designs, how they choose the packaging that you see. Basically that was what we were designing. And so I discovered the creative field in luxury and beauty. And then after my internship finished, quite quickly after my graduation, I ended up working for a tourism company.
Okay.
So it was a small company of maybe, in our office, we were maybe 10 people,
Hmm.
but sort of maybe the whole company was about 15 or so
Hmm.
people. And I have a word of caution against family companies. They
Uh-oh.
can be very good,
Hmm.
um, because you have obviously more like roles, and you end up, as I ended up being recruited, but ended up doing and working in very different to what I was actually recruited for. um, yeah, they can be very good in that. You get more responsibility. I was sort of basically in charge of my own department, which was
Right.
myself, but but it was still quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of sort of, if the HR is also doing accounting, which is also doing, like a lot of things, and ends
Right.
up being quite messy. And
Right.
yeah, the people are not quite
Right.
taken care of. So I ended up working for that it's a luxury concierge company that was doing, so in travel there is inbound and outbound travel,
Hmm.
and I was responsible for the inbound part. So
Okay.
inbound is people from the outside that come and travel in France,
Hmm.
whereas most of the other people, which was how the company had developed. It was at that point, I think, about 10 years old, and it
Hmm.
was like French, like people with means that would have a concierge that would mostly arrange for them travel, but also other things like,
Okay.
I don't know, like parties and tickets and events and things like that.
Right.
But I was in charge of the inbound part, so I worked with travel agents all over the world, mostly in the US, because that's where most of the luxury travel happens in France, actually.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
But also from everywhere else. Brazil was actually one of the countries that started to pop up quite a bit,
All right.
and
Did you get any celebrities signing up to come over?
no, but I ended up having almost, I don't want to do name dropping, but I almost had like someone quite famous. But it was how do you call, like, before someone gets married, they have like a party.
A bachelor party?
Yeah, so it was a
Uh,
bachelor party from the Silicon Valley. I will say that
oh, okay.
that happened in Paris, and it was quite and
It
you
must have
know
been Jeff Bezos now that he's divorced.
no, but yeah, it was someone on that level.
Oh my God.
But he ended up not coming
Saved. Anyway.
because of work.
Work. Oh, interesting. So you continued there. I think I skipped a question maybe for the audience, but how about a little background information about yourself? Then we can dive deeper into your personal journey. Can you tell us where you're from initially?
Yeah, sorry. No, you didn't skip. I did.
Oh, okay.
So I was born in Russia, but I grew up mostly in France.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I even did a little bit of a stint in US in San Francisco, actually. So
Mhm.
from 6 to 8, I lived in San Francisco, and then from 8 years old, I came to and lived in France. And
Mhm.
actually, I mean, I'm sure you know the Pays de la Loire, which are
Right.
the west of France,
Right.
and then I lived a bit in Strasbourg,
Mhm.
and then I finally arrived to Paris. Yeah.
Wow. So that's quite a journey. And now you're currently situated in, you mentioned Ireland,
Yeah, in Dublin.
Dublin. Nice. So you're kind of a globetrotter yourself. You're here and there. So, but I would say, do you like moving around, or was it just because it was family that you chose to move around?
I think once you were born in a country and live in another country, it sort of becomes much easier for you to just leave and live somewhere else. Like
Right.
it just becomes quite. I mean, I'm sure you know this. Like it probably doesn't really phase you as much as other people.
No.
Like I have friends that like were born in France, and they would like it sounds very hard for them to be able to live somewhere, even if it's Europe. Like anyway, so yeah, no, it's part of my DNA. My family is also all over. My dad is a diplomat, so he also like traveled and lives in different countries and changes them every 3 years. So
Right.
it's not something that's
It's the same thing. Like I mentioned to maybe some of my audience before, is that I grew up in Singapore till the age of 12, and it was at that age when the kid's personality developed from the age of 6 to 12. Then I came back to Pakistan. But what was ironic was I never truly settled into my country, and now I've been here almost for 10 to 11 years in Paris and France. And it's not that difficult to adjust. Maybe there's a language barrier, but other than that, I had no difficulty in, I would say, adjusting myself over here. Finding a job, making a few friends, and of course socializing. It does get easier, and I think I would recommend everyone maybe travel internationally, at least study abroad for a year or so. Yeah, I would recommend that. But you had why Ireland? Why Ireland right now? Why are you there?
Oh, my partner just got a job here, so
Okay.
I wouldn't come probably out of my own volition. But I have to say that I'm quite surprised by Ireland. Sorry, many people most people know it's in Europe, but like it just a bit of an understated country, but it's really nice. You think also they're a bit they have a lot of in common with the UK. But in terms of character, temperament, people are very different.
Okay.
British might be, but I have to say also that in Manchester, it's not like London is not France. London, sorry, is not the UK. Like Paris is not France.
Exactly.
So as soon as
That I
you
agree.
get
That I
outside,
agree. Yeah.
people are a bit different.
Yeah. I've experienced Normandy and maybe a bit of Marseille and Nice, and I can tell you, Paris, it should not be the what do you call stigma for France. There are a lot of people. There are 20 million people almost living in Paris, and from different ethnicities and diasporas. It's a bit like New York, you could say. Everyone's there, so it's not the definition of a country. So I can assume, because there are a lot of Pakistani and Indians in the UK, especially Manchester. I think you might see a lot of Desi people, but it doesn't define them. If you go to other places too, of course, and once again, London is the central part. Everyone goes to and like, hey, I've been to UK. No, you've been to London, my friend. That's different. But it's interesting. You mentioned that you like the people over there, because I've noticed quite a few of the schools in Paris, the business schools, they start their partnerships generally with Ireland and Dublin schools first. And they say they feel they're much more welcoming. I guess it's much more easier, or they're more welcoming, and they've experienced with, I think, the French public too. Most of the young sort of generation that said, "Oh, we have 1 year or 1 semester in Dublin, and we really liked it." They don't come back with anything negative about that, which is kind of nice too, I think. Okay, so currently you're located there. And one other question would be regarding, let's say, your personal journey before the freshman years, like before you're coming to American Business School of Paris, and then joining American Business School of Paris. This period of maybe, let's say, 6 years, the finality of your adult, I would say, your teenager and adulthood, joining the adulthood, going to practical life. Um, did you find your path while living here in Paris?
So what happened was that I was living in a tiny town of 30,000 people until my baccalaureate, so until I finished high school.
Right.
Coming from, I only realized that now, after going through therapy for like 2 and something years, that I've always felt, and I'm sure you know this as well, because you've said that when you came back to Pakistan, you didn't quite feel at home, but it was home. So I had this thing where after living in Moscow and living in San Francisco, I had this feeling of like then going to a 30,000 people like place. Like I spoke Russian with my mom at home. She made a point of always speaking Russian to us. I thank her for that because I ended up like keeping my language, but it ended up being like, especially you will know this, when you come from a high context culture to a low context culture, it's very different.
Oh yeah.
And I struggled a lot because I spoke Russian and French, and then quite also because of my time in San Francisco, I spoke also English. Never fit in. Like I always felt like there was a lot of people who were born in that town, who were gonna stay in that town, who like, and I was like, yeah, my dad is a diplomat. Like it was like a bit of a strange thing. But as a kid, you can't voice that. You don't understand that. You just go like, something's not feeling right, like what is happening. And especially I didn't have a parent that would come and sort of rationalize that, explain that, like nothing was happening. It was very, in Russia, I would say education is very guilt ridden. Like parenting is like, you need to do this, you need to do that,
you need to get better grades, or you'll be shame. It'll be shame for the family that you didn't survive. I suppose that's the Asian way, I think.
There is a bit of that also in Russian culture, and I just struggled. So then I started to do a college that was near the town that I lived in Angers. It's quite a nice town, but like just a bit bigger. But it only happened, so I started to pursue, it's a dual sort of bachelor so I didn't do my bachelor in Paris, so I did my bachelor in Angers, and that was in languages and economics.
Okay.
But simply because at that point I was speaking 3 languages, and I thought, my dad was like, oh, you should be an interpreter. So I was like, yeah.
Right on. Let's go down that road.
It made sense because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but I didn't feel a personal attachment to it, and that ended up, and the funny joke is that to this day, I speak fluently French, Russian, and English, but I cannot for the life of me translate a word, even a simple word, because it's just like, I don't have the pathways. Translating and speaking are 2 very different things.
Right.
And even that's a recommendation, actually. If you're trying to speak a language, don't try to translate from the language. I mean, you have to at the beginning, but quite quickly you have to abandon that, because all the time you'll be translating in your head, and it just doesn't work. The grammar is different, the vocabulary is different.
The context, like you mentioned, coming from high context to maybe slightly lower context. I would say France is slightly upper context, very slight. US is very, very low context. Everything is explicit. They have to share everything about their feelings, whereas maybe Russian or even Middle Eastern and Asian culture is very high context. We don't share our feelings. We don't go around hugging people to express that. We can use silence, and people are like, oh, that's awkward. In fact, some teachers till this day that are colleagues, they call out Asian or Indian students saying, oh, they don't participate, they must be stupid. I said, listen to me very carefully. One of the top doctors in this world or top teachers, if you go to Harvard, are Indian or Chinese people. So them not participating does not mean they're stupid. It's out of respect, they don't speak up, right? It's not in their culture to do so. Okay. American people like to talk a lot. That's not the same thing. So even if, and in some cultures, maybe like even Russian, and maybe if my mother has this habit, if she has to state something, she will start with a proverb, an idiom, a cliche, always. And in order to make what she's saying sound very, very strong and heavy, I tell my students in my classes, listen, in certain Asian cultures, high context, if we have to say something, it has to be meaningful. It can't be idle banter. Not like, hey, how are you doing? How's the kids? Not necessary. I just saw you yesterday. All right. It has to be something impactful. But coming back to the part when you transitioned to doing the MBA, I think I remember when you came into school, I was the associate dean for 6 months. And I remember offering you green tea from time to time. That's what I remember. You came into my office. I'm like, would you like some green tea? You came down to have a conversation. I think you're still trying to fit in to, the ABS culture. Did you, how do I say, I wouldn't say did you enjoy, how would you describe your time in Paris in general while doing the MBA?
I loved it. It was a really nice time of my life because I had come back. So my last year of bachelor, I went to the US.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to backtrack a bit, but I think it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the economics, all the business sort of courses I loved, which I hated when they were taught in French. And so I discovered there like a new sort of life. I loved the way the Americans approached teaching, how it was interesting. Like school has never been interesting, and it's crazy because you're thinking like in university, you're actually learning what you want. But yeah, in French school, that didn't really land with me. So American Business School was, I had a voice. I had like what I said, it mattered. Like it's crazy to say, but like we had presentations all the time. Like professors would say, "Yeah, good point," and I'm like, "What are they
Okay,
because I was never a student that would like get that kind of like sort of response. And other students looked at me like as someone who, because I suffered when I was a kid because my mom would always say I'm dumb.
Ah.
So I always felt like I was dumb. So in university, they're taught like huge lectures in these halls, and I couldn't really pay attention. It wasn't interesting to me. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So like I felt dumb. I really felt dumb. And in ABS, I didn't. I felt smart. I felt capable. I felt like all of these great things. And I felt like it was taught by professionals, by people who had like a life outside, who did things, who like, I remember Professor Thompson. We had a lot of classes with him.
Yeah.
Like he had a lot of like experience. He had a lot of people. Like I remember we had in our last year of the MBA, we had this project where we had to almost like develop a company.
The entrepreneurship course, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like we had presentations like often, and he would bring his like friends that were like CEOs and like, I don't know, like the working companies, and it felt very sort of.
I'm in touch with Rick.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. And of course, he has a respect of so many students and professors alike. He's a consultant himself. So funny thing is, one thing I have to learn from him is how does he enforce discipline in the class? I can never do that. I've seen teachers either get tough or either they smooth it out things with students, they beg them or whatever, please be quiet and silent. He commands respect somehow. And I think that when I attend his juries, I see why. Because he talks to the student like they're the clients and help them build their business, which is truly a very American style of teaching, participation by giving respect. And this is what I learned to do with my students too, especially with the newer students coming in, the BBA students, they feel very shy. And I say, listen, I use this term now. Imagine that this is your money, not your parent, and you're paying me to teach you. The more you get distracted, the more you put off your time not studying and not paying attention, I'm getting more pay and you're losing money. So I'm going to take that money home. I'm going to put it in a pillowcase and I'm going to sleep on it. How do you want to use your money? It's like, oh, that's a good point. And then they start participating more. It's like, no, it is something they're investing in. So I said, don't treat yourself as a student of my class. Consider yourself like you're here for financial advice or marketing advice, and take advantage of the material you've been given. So some people understand, some are shy, so they would message me later on, maybe on email or even on Insta or WhatsApp, like, sir, I'm a little shy, I can't talk. I said, listen, when you ask a question, remember nobody else matters in the background, okay? If they snicker at you or laugh at you, it reflects their maturity level. You're no longer in junior high, okay? So take advantage of your time here. You're going towards adulthood, and very shortly you'll be presenting in front of all these people. So it's time to build your path all the way there. It works for some it doesn't, but I still have to learn from Rick. How does he do it? And I'm glad you mentioned him. You know, I was hoping to grab him to bring him into a podcast with another friend of mine. He's agreed, but we'll have to set up a time. So I don't know what will we call it. I'm thinking of ripping off, what do you call it? Comedians in cars to teachers on Zoom, maybe? I don't know. Okay, so this is interesting that you mentioned that you had a very good time in the American system. And let's just talk a little bit about your path to your work right now, okay? How did you end up where you are? What are you currently doing? You're writing a blog for traveling, right?
So it's a magazine.
Okay, magazine.
Because
Sorry,
a blog,
called it a blog.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, for now, I suppose it can be called a blog because I'm the only one posting. But ideally, no, I want it to be a collaborative magazine about travel.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, I had worked in travel for about like a year, almost 2 years in that company. And I discovered the very sort of the crème de la crème of travel. Okay. Very, very high travel, like the 5-star palace hotels that you have in Paris is sort of where the clients would stay. And I would organize travels for them. And I hated the organizing part. I was really bad at managing anything, really. Like, I'm really bad at like sort of the step-by-step, the grunty work.
Okay.
So one thing that, because I did everything in that company that had to do, I did the management of the clients, I did the production, sort of the booking, the business development on both ends. I went to fairs, like in the US, in France, where hotels and clients would basically, and buyers would meet. But one thing that I did also was write newsletters.
Okay.
So I did it kind of when I had the time and when I had the inclination. I'm a very creative person, but I need to have the inspiration to do it. And I loved it. I found something there in the writing about travel that looked compelling. And case in point, I had like an opening rate of my emails, which, you know, in the hotel world, like there's so many emails that you have. But I had quite a high opening ratio of like 30 to 35%.
Oh, that's quite high. It is very high.
Yeah.
That is very high.
And I was like, there's something in that, you know? And I loved it. I love that part. So I was like, I want to do a company that talks about travel in a way that isn't talked about. I felt like people were focusing on the where, but not the how.
Okay, so going to a place, but not really taking advantage of where they are, right?
Yeah,
meaning
it felt it felt a bit robotic and mechanical, and because what I want also for my company, which is called Oyum, is to sort of bottle emotion. Because first of all, travel is about emotion, and travel is about exploring yourself more than it is about exploring the place you go to. So you can have big emotions in anywhere. Like
that's something really nice what you said. It's traveling is more about finding yourself. It reminds me of that movie. What was that? Into the Wild? Where people, I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't watched it yet. No,
I haven't either. I might get depressed watching it, but The story about the guy, he died in the wild, by the way. He's lived his whole life over there, but the idea was, the term find yourself. And people, they go on the sabbatical and they get away from everyone, they drop off their friends, and they're like, what's happening to me? I'm growing on the inside, but I need to change maybe also my environment. So I think you can use that, instead of discovering new places, find yourself in new places.
And the fact that travel is plural,
Mhm.
that's the hard part, I guess, for people, is that travel is so, an emotion in travel is so fleeting. What touches someone might be completely different what something else touches someone else. So yeah, and but I want to bring on like a lot of different people that come and travel about, and that come and talk about travel that touch them. Because when I read something like, and it can be something so small, like I went to a hotel in the south of France, which I guess might have like started this whole thing also. It's called Villa Lacoste. I
Okay.
experienced, and it's a very nice hotel, obviously, but I don't think you need to spend a lot of money either. Some things just happen to cost a lot, and that's just a fact. But not everything has to. But that hotel did. Yeah, sorry. But I ended up like, I don't know, like discovering myself, and it was so beautiful, but beautiful in so many multiple ways, not just in a cold way, not just in like this aesthetic pleasing way, in this like, I don't know, it was warm and inviting,
Cozy, warm, and inviting.
and something happened there, and when I was talking about it and when I wrote that article, I think people can feel that. And that's sort of what I'm trying to replicate for others, to be able to talk about travel that touched them. And not to have, also one of my pet peeves is that when you try to find anything online, like for example, I went to Hong Kong and I was trying to find places to shop, and I couldn't. You have these like monumental lists of things, and it's so hard to find the things that are just good. I just want 5 things or 3, whatever it is, but that touched someone and that were really nice. Not something that's exhaustive, not something that's like, yeah, here are all the places you can go. No, give me 3. Give me the small like boutiques. Give me the things that made you feel something.
Right.
Because so much travel happens also for reasons that are not good reasons, just to have a nice picture to post, not, things that don't make sense. Like, did that like give you something? What will you remember 2 years after you travel? What will stay with you? And that's the thing that I want people to share, and that's the thing that I want people to write about. And that's
Awesome.
what Oyum is. But
what does Oyum mean? Where does the word come from?
Nothing. I was just looking for a name, but it's actually, I think, a Turkish last name. But yeah, I was just looking for something that was round and short, and that would be pronounced the same way in different languages, basically.
Okay, that's interesting. You kind of remind me of this YouTuber me and my wife follow. His name is Mark Wiens. He's a Asian Canadian guy who only goes to different countries to only eat street food. But the thing is, he's not pretentious. He would tell you when the food doesn't taste great, but he can eat all the spiciest foods. And recently kind of discovered him because he came to my country. He went to my country 2 or 3 times. First time he went to one of the metropolitan, then he said he loved it. He went to the other metropolitan, then the 3rd time, then the 4th time. And he's like, I just love this country. But the problem is, he shows a side of a country that is, very unique and beautiful. I've lived in my country in a city which I detested. If people ask me, what is living in your city like? I honestly tell them, have you played GTA San Andreas or GTA 5? Like, is it that bad? I'm like, that's one of my cities. I'm pretty sure my country has many more beautiful things to offer. But unfortunately, I did not travel my own country that much due to, I wouldn't say financial constraint, but familial constraints too. But there's so many ways to discover something. And if you are helping someone rediscover that, don't give up on that. That can turn into something bigger. Maybe right now it's just maybe in the form of a small magazine, and maybe you just need to scale up your project. Who knows, it can become something bigger. So I would recommend you also, if you're writing about these things, if you travel, make videos, make a vlog, Get out there, because right now the world has become so small. And I'm not saying become an influencer. That term is abused, very abusive term. And you probably, and I'm not even comfortable with that, saying that term. I would say you're someone who is providing in-depth information. So it's coming from the soul, right? That is what's appreciated. No matter how many kids go onto TikTok, at the end of the day, after 4 or 5 years, when they will start making their own money, they'll unfollow those guys. I gave the same concept about the people in the YouTube industry or Instagram. I said, name me any YouTuber who survived more than 10 years. And they only come up with 2 or 3 names, and those two are forgotten, because it's not, the industry doesn't move like that. But people will always follow someone or read up on someone who just provide maybe spiritual or emotional insight. So this is it's a wonderful project. I think you should make it something bigger. This is just a personal advice. I could be wrong. You might find something else to do. So, I mean, now that your project, how long have you been working on your personal project?
It's been a little over 2 years. But in that time we moved. So I started it because I moved to Manchester to follow my partner, and then we moved again to Ireland a bit like after like almost a year. It's been the hardest part about having a company is to become the person that will create that company.
Oh, the founder's dilemma.
It's I've learned also quite recently too that working on your company and working for your company are two very, very different things.
And also difficult. There's no 9 to 5 in entrepreneurship.
No.
You know?
And like I want to be candid about this, because I think people have this idea that, I don't know, I think people have many ideas of entrepreneurship. And it might be, I have never heard someone talk about this, so I want to be candid.
Good. Yeah.
Most days, I don't work on my company because I can't. Because I emotionally can't.
You're drained of all that energy and motivation, right?
My proudest achievement, I think, at this point is not to have given up.
Well, that's good. And you should not. But you'll always have that nagging feeling at the, like someone standing behind you. Hey, today you can give up today, move on to something easier. But I have given up. I had given up on my entrepreneurship dream some time ago when I started a mini small e-commerce company when I was in my bachelor with 2 of my class fellows. And I just gave up. I felt exhausted all the time. And I said, you know what, I give up. And maybe at that time I was wrong or right, I would never know. But I really salute the people who keep on pushing, because one day it will happen. It will happen that you'll find that success, and you'll turn back and you see all the hard work and the tears and the nights where you were not motivated and you push yourself and you did it. It will come to fruition, but you need patience maybe. And from time to time, it's okay to put your project aside. It's okay to move away from the project and get a different perspective. I personally speaking, as a teacher, this is also entrepreneurship in a way. Sometimes when I'm grading papers, I feel like tearing the papers apart and eating them. That's how bad I feel. Sometimes students message me or email me demanding a better grade, and or they call me names. I've seen feedback, horrendous feedback. Okay, and it makes me want to scream. I'm like, I want to pick up my PC and throw it, and then I realize I'm not that rich, so I can't afford to throw my PC. So I take a minute, calm down, talk to a friend. He sometimes feels the same way, and we just say, you know what, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's not going to stop us from doing what we always did, and we're quite passionate about this. It's teachers sometimes lose their aura. It's the same drudge, but I've had teachers in my life who were extremely passionate, who gave up their very good day jobs. Like they got paid really well, right? Directors of companies, and they're like, no, this is it. And I think the last thing to make me feel very happy at what I'm doing, I went to a friend launched a company. It's like a scheduling company for teachers. And he invited this professor from, what was this? I think he was from Neoma. And he used to work for Dassault. So he's a big shot, but older retired gentleman, very, very, I don't know how to say it. It's like if Anthony Hopkins was French. That's how suave he was. He spoke so well. And I was just mesmerized. I'm like, wow, this guy's so charismatic. And he said, I worked for Dassault for almost 30 years. Okay, I've worked with major clients, but I can't tell you how happy I am teaching. And he's like, I'm working with younger minds. And my step into my career was my friend who worked at Neoma called me. He's like, why don't you come over and lecture a class for management? It's like, I don't know how to teach. It's like, shut up and come over. I'll give you the slides. It's like, I taught, my students gave me a good reaction. And I continued, and here I am 10 years later, still teaching and having the time of my life. All right. So, and that was just maybe before the pandemic, right? That's when I met him. Yep. And I said, okay, if this older gentleman is happy after having a very illustrious career, then why am I giving up? Why do I always have this sensation that I'm not up to it? Maybe I'm not the best teacher. Maybe I'm not doing my job well. Maybe I've disappointed someone. And I said, it's not my fault all the time. Sometimes my energy is wasted in the wrong direction. I think maybe one day you'll find out where to invest your energy and where to cut corners. I hate to say this word, but you've got to have a cheat sheet for your business too, where you can invest your time or where your energy goes. And the most important thing I learned from the French people is me time, vacances, right? It is so important. Yeah. Coming from a culture where people work nonstop, workaholics, I will thank my wife for that. She is a French national. So she's like, where are we going for vacation? And I'm like, what vacation? I booked my whole semester, my summer. And then she would slap me on the head. It's like, idiot, we also have to go for vacation. We have children, you know. I'm like, what? We have kids? And so it made it actually, she knows I don't like traveling, or I'm not the vacation type person, but I actually do. I like it that she reserves the hotels and the beach part and going out. She makes it fun. I need that. And maybe from time to time, you can step away. I think it would be okay to do so. Don't feel guilty. That's what I would say. Don't feel guilty about it. Okay, you're achieving something, people appreciate you. You see the results in your data, the open rates and maybe the conversion rates. Keep on going. One day it's going to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to multiply. And maybe you might need to, one last advice would be maybe talk to a marketing consultant about growing your business. Over here, I might sell my consultancy to you, but no, I'm not going to share my consultancy. But my advice would be to reach out to a digital marketing agency, but one that is more affordable, or check it out on maybe Fiverr or Odesk, who can help you reach a bigger audience. It makes a big difference, maybe having a SEO functionality built in, having a bigger reach, maybe using video blogs. Try that. It works. Set up a schedule, record, edit, produce, and keep producing content. You will get there, Joe. I truly believe it will, because I'm quite happy with what you're doing. It's not every day you get to hear someone believing in their own project, and they're like, oh, I'm working for XYZ company. Okay, it's a job, but it's the job that you chose, or did you land on your feet? So this is something you choose to do. Be passionate about it. Don't worry. Okay, one last question though. I wish we could have more time to talk. It just feels awkward cutting it off and like, yeah, goodbye. But we will again see each other, and I will mention you to Nuno. I will send your email to him, and I said if you need to reserve my young friend over here.
Thank you.
If you could give advice to your former self, maybe 5-10 years ago, okay, maybe even 15 years ago. Imagine you're giving it to yourself rather than say if you would give advice to a younger person. What advice or what statement would you give them to maybe give them courage or motivation?
Believe in yourself, even if that means that you trust yourself, even if that means you don't talk to your mom, or you don't talk to your dad, or you don't talk to I don't know who. It doesn't matter. You're the most important relationship you will ever have. And that's sort of very against Russian culture, but it's just a fact. It has helped me tremendously also to go to psychoanalysis to help me understand that I wished I had done it before. It would have solved me or spared me a lot of heartache from feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I didn't know which way to go, and having people tell me where to go, because when people feel lost, usually people around them start saying a lot of shit, because they're uncomfortable,
Hmm.
with people saying, I don't know what to do. So they're like, start to fill in the holes.
Right.
So that's how I ended up thinking that I was going to be an interpreter. And yeah, and that everyone can be an entrepreneur, I think, because I don't have sort of that entrepreneurship, I think, spirit. I don't work all the time. I don't want to work all the time. In fact, I want to work not at all.
That is the entrepreneurship spirit. You don't get the
Maybe.
hustle, make the money. All right, I'm done. I'm on a boat. So
But
that's it. So
yeah,
the hustle.
and just trust yourself and go to psychoanalysis.
I remember going to a psychoanalysis in Pakistan by myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I told my mom about it, and she said, "Really, you do?" And she was
Well,
like,
good
"Okay,
to
what?" She
know.
said, "Yeah, no, I told her, but this is not a psychiatrist, psychoanalysis, because I actually asked someone that where do I go? I don't know who to go to. I didn't even know psychoanalysis existed." Psychiatry existed in my country, and the girl that I went to, she was actually just coming out of med school. So when she looked at me, she's like, "Oh, you're quite young." And I'm, "Yeah, did your doctor recommend you?" I'm like, "No, I came on my own." Like, that is impressive, because usually if you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist in my country, they will put a stamp on you. You're crazy. You need to go to the madhouse. But I swear to God, it helped me so much, especially for job interviews, because she helped me also find my path in a way. She gave me logic tests and other things, and then she explained the
Wow, it's like
personality issues.
analyst. Wow.
Oh, it was amazing. I loved those sessions. It was so insightful. Anyways, I think I've taken also quite a lot of your time. Thank you, Julie. It was wonderful. And
Thank you so much for having me.
okay, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, just hear me out for a little message. I want to create content about all the inspiring stories and the journeys of the people I have known over the past many years. As an educator who sees the growth of their students, I want to share their stories to help inspire others. Please consider subscribing and sharing this channel with your friends. That will also encourage me to make more content. Till next time.